My name is Tracy Young, and we're at Hand Knit Yarn Studio. I actually started knitting when I was really young. My grandmother and my mother taught me. Probably was just, knitting really bad, like little scarves when I was young. She never used to follow a pattern either. As far as I remember, she would just sort of knit from memory, but she would be able to do really intricate and really amazing things just by memory. I picked it up again about 10 years ago when my friend Kate, who is now my business partner, I saw her knitting one day and I asked her about what she was doing, and she sort of reintroduced me to the world of knitting with really, really great yarns. The more, I'd say like an old-fashioned knitter that tends to knit for other people. They'll knit baby blankets, they'll knit for family members. They consider knitting more functional, more of a necessity. But the new style of knitter tends to knit more for themselves. They're looking for higher quality yarns. And really understanding the time and patience that's required to, knit something, a large project that, takes, a lot of time. I think that our, younger knitters or, sort of more socially conscious knitters are taking more care into what they're doing and not just in the craft, but also in the quality of the product that they're using as well. I think people are just more looking at products where they sort of know where the product is coming from. Yarn, most of the yarns that we deal with are natural fibers that come from a sheep or come from an alpaca, and they're spun by a farm, and sometimes it's a local farm. Sometimes it's a small company that has a direct relationship to the farm. So there is definitely an interest there. Knitting can be a very solitary pastime, so there is also a draw for people to get together. And we know of quite a few of our customers who actually have their own little knitting group. Knitting for creativity or knitting as a passion has sort of just been added to the knitting as a practicality. It's practical, but it's also enjoyable. I think it's all of those things in one.
My mom knit from patterns, and she was so enviable. And I watched her make these intricate fisherman's sweaters with baubles and cables and all of these amazing things. And I couldn't understand it. But one day she took me to the knitting store, and we found a very simple pattern of a vest that was knit from the bottom to the neck. And the neck was cast on and cast off, and then to create the shoulders. And then you kept knitting, and all you did was sew up the sides. And I remember it was in this white and green and blue boucle, some kind of a wool blend. And I was so proud of myself that I completed it, but I did it without the pattern because I drew out what it was supposed to look like and did it that way and measured. And my mom kind of threw her hands up and she said, well, I don't know what you're doing, but you're just like your grandmother. That's what she still says to this day. And it drives her nuts because she can't understand how I can create things just from my head. And they take on a life and people buy them and they're on show and all these things. It's really fascinating to her. When I was a kid, there was a woman named Jeannie Becker, and she did a show called Fashion Television, and we traveled the world to all of the runway shows. And I was glued to the television when that came on Saturday and Sunday nights. I studied every designer and looked at it and wondered and made up these reviews in my mind about why something would be valid and why something it wouldn't be. And I looked at knitting and I thought, well, why wouldn't the craft of knitting move into an area of fine art based on conceptual ideas, driving it, finery, finer fibers, and all these things. And so it really motivated me to push my limits and let whatever wanted to come out start to come out. I think the creative spirit in all of us will find its medium, and you just know it and you just feel it, and that is how you communicate. And so certainly there was a legacy that was passed on to me, and I had the fibers available to me, but I can just feel everything in those fibers and the needles, and that's where I communicate, through those stitches. You just know it. buying something off the internet and not being able to feel it or understand it is much different than going into a store and being able to touch something and understand how you're going to relate to it or what it's going to feel like on your body. So it has changed. It used to be that you could go into a store and you'd run into someone and you would share ideas and share what your work looked like and all those kinds of things. And that is gone. What we do have, of course, is images, constant images, based on online shopping or Ravelry and Etsy and all those kinds of things. But we have lost the legacy, the passing down and the sharing in person. And people are scrambling to get that together again, I think. And it's tough because we can make groups, but it's the wonderful synchronicity and coincidence of running into people in stores or knowing that it's your favorite and there's only 5 left, and so you have to try and make something with that 5. And if you need 6, then you have to improvise. So there's all these things that have become lost through the creative process and all the effects on the creative process that we just don't have anymore. I don't look at it like all of the focus is in this fabric and all of the wonder is in the textile, and then you just kind of throw it on. I mean, it's being worn on a body. So why not invite that interaction and allow it to participate in the design? So this is an example of one of my intuition pieces, and you can see this area is kind of the neck area. It's the starting, it's the spine, it's the anchor of the whole piece. And then this, all of these strands and waves are the casting on and casting off that I do intuitively. The really fun thing about this particular piece in the undulations is that I made a little experiment for myself. And I used the same size needle the entire time, but the variety of fibers would be calling for different needles, so bigger needles or smaller needles. But I thought, what happens? How does it sculpt itself when I use one needle only and intertwine all of these different fibers? What's going to happen? You become a lot less fearful of things in your life when you experiment through your art form, and certainly in knitting, going, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'm hoping that the generations that are coming will find validity and satisfaction and confidence in textile arts and want to raise them to the forefront once again. But we need education. We need to educate and get people excited about using their entire body to create, not just sitting in front of a computer or an iPad and using software, which is a very valid thing. But we have a whole body that provides us with sensory experience, and also that we can contribute to. And unless we use it, we don't know what we can create.
So Bailey, you're with a knitting group here. Where are we exactly?
We're at the Mulberry Cafe on James North.
And how often do you meet here?
We meet here every Sunday at 12 until about 2.
And why do you meet here?
Because we love to knit.
Right. And what is it? You're not knitting by yourself. I mean, knitting tends to be sort of a solitary thing. So what's the advantage of coming here with a group?
I think a lot of people here are knitting for the first time. I think it's helpful to troubleshoot problems with people in front of you. Most people are learning through the internet or friends kind of telling them what to do, and then they don't know where to go from there. The fact that we have everybody here together, and some people have been knitting for 10 years, some people have been knitting for a month, we can all deal with everything together and help each other with our problems.
Right, and how long have you been knitting?
I've been knitting almost 20 years.
So Ali, how long have you been coming to this knitting circle?
I've been in it for just over a year now.
Right. And why did you come?
It's really nice to have time set aside in the week. Like, I work Monday to Friday. It's a stressful job, so it's nice to have time set aside to do something that I enjoy doing. It helps take my mind off of everything.
Right. So how long have you been knitting?
Since I was 10. When you're in a group like this, you're able to talk face to face, whereas if you're learning it online, you can only go based on what's in the video or what's in the article. You can't ask specific questions. Like, for example, a lot of new knitters that come here, they have questions about when they've missed a stitch, or if they've accidentally knit into half a stitch and they have another half stitch left. It's just a lot easier to clarify things.
Are you knitting for utilitarian purposes or for art purposes, or how would you view the stuff you're doing?
I think it's more for a sense of accomplishment.
Right.
And also it's kind of like something to do with my hands to keep me busy. And it sort of ends up being like a meditation. Not a lot of my friends knit. People do think it's cool though, and usually when I tell them I knit, they want me to teach them.
I've been knitting for exactly 7 days now.
And how many times did you come to this group?
This is the second time. Actually, I just wanted a hobby, and I thought knitting would be fun and easy, a way to relax. It's a lot easier than I thought it would be, and everyone's super helpful. It's nice. It's a good community. I think there's no reason why you can't have both the internet and groups of knitters working together. A lot of people start here on the internet and they get the basics down, and then they want more human interaction, and they come here. It kind of works together. When we have new knitters, a lot of the time I'll teach them and I'll say, go home and here's some things to watch on the internet that can help you out when somebody else isn't there.
Okay, great. And what's your sense of how long this is going to go on?
Hopefully forever. This has been 1.5 years so far, meeting at the Mulberry every Sunday. I see no reason to stop.